Muscle things, hundreds of different, I don't know what's. They run in packs of 4, 10, or 28, sold separately.
In the wild world of 1980s toy crazes, you had your giants, transforming robots, ninja turtles, and dolls that came with their own adoption papers. But then there were the fads that burned just as bright, yet faded just as fast. The ones that, for a single brilliant moment, were everywhere. It was an era of neon colours, big hair, and even bigger risks in the toy aisle. Competition was brutal, and to get noticed you had to be different. And in the mid-80s, nothing was more different than a pocket-sized army of bizarre pink plastic wrestlers. Oh yes! In the mid-1980s, a strange invasion swept across America's playgrounds. An army of tiny pink wrestlers. They were cheap, they were weird, and they were absolutely everywhere. But what if I told you that the real story of these millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere was stranger than you could have ever imagined? This is the story of M.U.S.C.L.E, a toy that started as a joke in Japan, became an American phenomenon, and then vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Now, to really get the M.U.S.C.L.E story, we have to travel back to its roots. And those roots aren't in an American boardroom, but in the pages of a Japanese manga from 1979. So the story starts with Kinnikuman, which literally translates to Muscle Man. Created by the artist duo Yuda Tamago, Kinnikuman was first a gag manga, a parody of legendary heroes like Ultraman. So the main character, Suguru Kinniku, was a clumsy, cowardly prince from another planet who was only called on to fight giant monsters when all the real heroes were, well, busy. And get this, his superpower came from eating garlic, which would slowly fill a meter on his forehead until he could grow to giant size. But what started as a simple parody quickly evolved. The manga shifted its focus to the world of professional wrestling, blending high-stakes action with goofy, bizarre character designs. And it became a monster hit in Weekly Shonen Jump magazine. It got so popular that in 1983, Toei Animation, the studio behind countless anime classics, adapted Kinnikuman into a TV series that ran for 137 episodes. And following the unbreakable rule of the 80s, a hit cartoon meant a hit toy line was coming. So, in 1983, the Japanese toy giant Bandai launched a line of small collectible figures based on the show's massive cast of characters. They were called Kinkeshi, a mashup of Kinnikuman and Keshigomu, the Japanese word for eraser. That's right, the original toys were conceived as collectible erasers, which of course explains their distinct soft plastic feel and, more importantly, their iconic pink flesh-toned colour. Sold cheaply in vending machines, they were an easy grab for any kid with a little spare change. The formula was a smash hit, and by the time the line ended in Japan around 1988, Bandai had cranked out an incredible 418 unique figures. So back in the US, toy company Mattel was constantly hunting for the next big thing. And around late 1985, they spotted the Kinkeshi craze in Japan and saw a golden opportunity. The timing was perfect. American culture was primed for a wrestling invasion. The WWF, led by larger-than-life characters like Hulk Hogan, was blowing up and turning pro wrestling into a mainstream event. So Mattel licensed the toy line from Bandai, but knew it needed a Western-friendly spin. They rebranded the tiny figures as M.U.S.C.L.E, a perfectly forced acronym for millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere. But what made Mattel's strategy so brilliant was that they imported the figures but ditched the complicated Japanese backstory. The Kinnikuman anime was seen as too weird and violent for American TV, so Mattel didn't even bother trying to bring it over. Instead, they cooked up a super simple narrative. The heroic Thug Busters, led by a hero named Muscle Man, were in a forever war against the evil Cosmic Crunchers, led by the villain Terry Bull. And beyond that, the story was left completely up to the kids. So Mattel's marketing was genius. They packaged the figures to create a collector's frenzy. Random 4-packs, semi-see-through garbage can 10-packs that added a bit of mystery, and a massive 28-packs with fixed characters. They even had a short-lived promo where you get a free figure inside a can of Nestle Quick. This whole approach tapped right into the gross-out culture of the mid-80s, putting M.U.S.C.L.E right next to other playground status symbols like Garbage Pail Kids and Mad Balls. TV commercials showed the figures as this weird, unstoppable force, with the tagline asking, "How many can you capture?" It wasn't just a toy, it was a challenge.
From Mattel, it's millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere, and there's one lurking free in specially marked packages of Quick.
Now, by 1986, Muscle Men were a full-blown sensation, skyrocketing into the top 10 best-selling toys of the year. And their wild popularity was thanks to a perfect storm of factors. First off, they were cheap and easy to get. A 4-pack cost about $1, so any kid with a little allowance could start a collection. This was a huge change from the bigger, pricier action figures of the day, like the 8-inch LJN wrestling figures, which were a major purchase. Muscle was the ultimate impulse buy. And then you had the portability and collectability. At only a couple of inches tall, these things could go, well, anywhere. Pockets, backpacks, and school desks all became wrestling rings, and with 233 official figures in the American line, the variety felt endless. This wasn't like collecting a toy line with a dozen characters. This was a serious quest. Mattel stoked that fire by releasing a mail-order poster showing every single figure, turning it into a collector's checklist and a map of this vast universe. Playgrounds became trading posts, with kids obsessively swapping duplicates to hunt for the characters they were missing. But maybe the most brilliant part of the Muscle craze was its lack of a story. Since there was no Saturday morning cartoon telling you who was who, kids were free to make it all up themselves. A figure with a teacup for a head, another that was a walking planet, a guy made of puzzle pieces, well, their names, powers, and whether they were good or evil were all up for debate. This blank slate for creativity was a huge draw, turning a simple piece of plastic into a vessel for pure imagination. I mean, it's amazing how many stories we invented for these little pink dudes. I still remember my favorites, the ones that looked like ninjas or had those weird claw hands. What about you? Tell us in the comments, which Muscle figure was the crown jewel of your collection, or the one you were always trying to trade for? Now, like all great fads, the reign of Muscle had to end at some point. And its downfall didn't come from a rival toy, but from a tech revolution that changed how kids played forever. The Nintendo Entertainment System. Yes, the NES exploded into American homes in 1987, and its impact on the toy industry was like an earthquake.
Will you be the one to witness the birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System? The one to play with Rob, the extraordinary video robot.
Suddenly, kids' attention and their allowance money was shifting from physical toys to digital worlds. The whole toy market was shaken, and many lines that were already losing steam were quickly axed. Muscle was unfortunately one of those casualties. The craze that burned so brightly in 1986 fizzled out fast. For its part, Mattel never seemed to have a long-term plan for the brand. Since they were just licensing the Kinnikuman property and didn't own it, their investment had a ceiling. They had no real reason to develop the line further with new ideas or deeper stories. And their one real attempt to evolve the line, releasing the figures in new colors like magenta, orange, and dark blue, mostly backfired. Kids and collectors wanted the original iconic pink flesh color. The colored figures were also made from a slightly harder plastic that didn't have that satisfying, eraser-like feel of the originals. It was a small change, but it was enough to turn off the core fans. And by 1988, just a few short years after their explosive debut, Muscle figures had vanished from store shelves. The army of unusual creatures had been defeated, not by another wrestling toy, but by an Italian plumber from Brooklyn. Who'd have thought it? And even though its time in the spotlight was short, the legacy of Muscle is surprisingly huge. It basically wrote the playbook for countless in-my-pocket collectible toy lines that came after it in the 90s, like Monster in My Pocket, Ninja Mites, and Fistful of Aliens. You can draw a straight line from the Muscle phenomenon to the collectible crazes of today, from Pokemon figures to Shopkins. The formula of low price, highly collectible, and endless variety proved to be timeless. So, there we have it. The story of Muscle is a perfect snapshot of the 1980s toy world. It was a weird Japanese parody that, thanks to clever marketing and perfect timing, became an American sensation. They were more than just toys. They were playground currency, a blank canvas for our stories, and an unforgettable piece of 80s pop culture. They were millions of unusual small creatures lurking everywhere, and for a glorious moment in time, they were absolutely inescapable.